Yes.
I got the director's cut. You got the theatrical version. So we'll see how this goes. Yeah, okay, so today we are doing 2003's Daredevil. My name is George, and with me is Chris. And yeah, let's talk about this very forgettable movie where each of us watched a different version.
Daredevil, the man with the double Ds. I don't know who had a worse time here, because I understand the director's cut is 30 minutes longer, which makes it seem like you had a worse time. It's supposed to be better, which makes it seem like I had a worse time.
Yeah, one of my first notes is that the music in this movie is just awful.
It's about as 2003-y as it could possibly be.
Yeah,
but way worse than Fast and Furious and stuff.
Way worse, yeah. But you know what? I think 14-year-old me probably would have loved it. Because it feels like that. It's that kind of awful. It feels like, you know, sort of edgy teenager music.
It definitely does.
Yeah.
So all the action is like nu metal and post grunge, and then all the romance stuff is like Evanescence.
Yeah, exactly. All the way up to Evanescence, which really surprised me when that kicked in. You know, an hour or so into the movie, and I just suddenly hear that. I was like, whoa. This brought back some terrible high school memories.
Iron Man was not yet Iron Man. Jon Favreau was in this movie, and he kind of already has his Marvel shtick down, I found. And apparently during this movie was when he started talking to Marvel about what would eventually become Iron Man, and the cinematic universe as we know it was born. But at this time, superhero movies were still kind of a giant question mark. After the massive success of Spider-Man, the budget was bumped up to $80 million. Which just went into more terrible CG sequences, I assume. We were just getting going. There was still lots of room for Marvel to experiment and find what worked and what didn't, and they found a lot of what didn't in this movie.
And you know what? I for that, I'm glad that this movie exists, because, like, yeah, it helped Jon Favreau get started with the first Iron Man, which undoubtedly is a great movie, the first Iron Man movie.
Yeah, it does right basically everything that this one does wrong. So Ben Affleck's first time out as a superhero. Apparently after this he said he thought it was super embarrassing and he didn't want to do superheroes again, and
and then he did Batman.
Then his tone changed a little as movies changed a little. I was surprised how little I was annoyed by Ben Affleck, because I remembered him as like the annoying guy that no one liked or understood why he was in big budget movies at this time. And actually, I kind of thought he was fine in this movie when the mask was off. When his costume was on, I did think it was kind of embarrassing a lot of the time.
Like, he plays arrogant really well, I think, but arrogance doesn't fit the character. I keep comparing this to the TV show, and Charlie Cox also plays a bit of arrogance when he needs to be, but his character, when alone, isn't arrogant.
So clarify this for me, because I haven't seen the show. This movie I felt was kind of caught halfway between wanting to have some like gritty, like Hell's Kitchen crime elements and kind of like have some like blue collar appeal and bring some of that like old action movie flavor in, and obviously it's a vigilante story. Does the show lean more into the gritty side?
Oh, so much more.
That's
even in its style of fighting. Yeah. See, that was the one biggest comparison I had with the movie to the show. Maybe I might as well just kind of go into it right now. Is that the fighting in the show, he struggles a lot. He, as in Daredevil, struggles a lot. I mean, he's brawling. He's constantly on the ground. He's constantly out of breath. Because he doesn't have any superpowers. He's just a person. But he's really, really well trained. And in this movie, I mean, he does things that Spider-Man does without any of the supernatural abilities. You know, there's that scene in the movie where the first time we see him put on his suit in a very Batman and Robin kind of way.
Yep.
And he jumps out of the window. He falls 12 floors onto like a window cleaner's platform and just rolls with it.
And later when he enters the fight with Bullseye, same thing. He literally just jumps stories down onto a concrete street and lands with like straight legs.
And speaking of his abilities, in this this first fight scene at the I guess the biker bar club, when people start pulling out the guns, why does he get to see bullets in slow-mo? His abilities don't make sense in the rule it established for itself. Like, I get that sonar, you know, when there's a noise, it kind of pings the whole room for him, right? So if he's in an enclosed space, the gunfire and its reverb afterwards should just light up the whole room consistently.
I also want to say this about the gunfire. In the next scene after this one, he will chase his target to a train station, and he'll be about to kill him, but then he'll be totally disabled because a train passes. And, and he'll, like, fall to the ground clutching his ears. And I was like, but you're just fighting guys who are shooting guns.
The other part is, how does he not know the train's coming? You can feel it before you can even... Can't you feel the wind?
He'll later, as I'm going to complain, hear a sniper rifle being cocked from like 500 feet, so...
Right.
Yeah, but he can't hear the train coming down the tunnel.
So his abilities are incredibly inconsistent in this movie. Oh my god, he's such a Mary Sue.
The one time Daredevil is downed in this movie is just so he can not help Elektra in a fight.
And even in that plot beat where Elektra thought Daredevil is the one that killed her father and stabs him in the shoulder, it doesn't make any sense because the way they shot that scene where Elektra's father dies, she can clearly see that he was reaching for his cane that was thrown by another person. And that wasn't a shot that's like beyond the capability of
exactly. Stuntmen could have done that with wire work. I know it. Yeah. I know they could have done it.
Yeah. So I don't know why they didn't. And then there was another scene now. I don't know if this one is in the theatrical release, but there's this shot where they're climbing up this giant organ and it's full CG characters. And I was like, it can't be beyond the capability of stunt people to
climb an organ.
To climb an organ. Why CG this? In the wider action shots, like for example, the playground fight, right? When you can clearly see the actor's face, it just, like, I have a feeling they didn't spend a lot of time or effort on choreography for the main actors because their action sequences, whether it's like the training montages or their sparring sequence here, it feels really clunky and really awkward.
It did not rise to the standard of Charlie's Angels, that's for sure. It was this entire sequence, from a story perspective, from an action choreography perspective, and certainly from a soundtrack perspective, was just wildly misjudged. I love these scenes. You know, this is exactly what Mask of Zorro did amazingly with Antonio Banderas and Catherine Zeta-Jones. The romantic leads have this sequence where they meet and fight, and it's like half a real fight, half like sexy flirting romance. Unfortunately, they didn't have the physical capabilities, like you're saying, and that made all the rest very, very disappointing. You're supposed to feel the exhilaration of these two people meeting for the first time and finding an equal, and instead you just are kind of laughing at how awkward they look doing their obviously choreographed moves.
And there's also just no establishment for Elektra, because she walked into a cafe, gets that classic 2000s, pretty girl walks into a location shot, right? And then she leaves. That's really it. There's no hint of anything about her.
He incorrigibly uses his blindness as a means of hitting on her to put her off balance at the start.
To guilt trip her.
She leaves, I assume because she's being harassed by Ben Affleck. Then he follows her into the street, demands her name. She doesn't want to give her name. He physically grabs her, and then he starts to fight her in front of children. This is not the story of a likable man.
Yeah, all that leading up to his stupid smirk on this. I hate it. Every single moment of this meet cute.
Which reminds me, if you're interested in listening to the full-length discussion of this episode, you can find it on our Patreon. The link is on screen and in the description down below. If you go over there, you will get the entire recording in an audio format like a podcast. Check it out, support us, help us keep doing this. We really appreciate it. Anyways.
I don't know if I just missed the sequence where Kingpin informed Bullseye that there's such a person as Daredevil. I loved that, as far as I could tell, Bullseye's pulling up on his motorcycle, Daredevil drops down, they stare at each other, and then they're just like, well, I guess I gotta fight this guy. As far as I can tell, neither of them had any reason to know who the other one was, but they were definitely clear that it was immediately time to fight. It just made me wonder about, in general, I guess if just anyone shows up in a super suit of any kind, you just assume, we're probably fighting now.
I can tell that Colin Farrell's having fun.
Yes.
But as a character, I don't know. It's why is he so sexual about everything he does?
And is that, please let us know in the comments, because we're probably pissing off all the much more knowledgeable Marvel fans, but is this stuff from the comics, or is Colin Farrell just giving a weird performance because he's Colin Farrell?
It's very awkward because like every time I see him, I laugh. I don't think, you know, menacing or dangerous. I know he has dangerous abilities, but he doesn't. I can't take him seriously.
No, he kind of he doesn't seem to take himself or anything else seriously either. In fact, his entire motivation, I believe, for the second half of the film is just that Daredevil made him miss.
How do you kill a man without fear?
By putting the fear in him.
Yeah, like George mentioned, Daredevil gets lightly stabbed in the shoulder, which, like, completely debilitates him. Elektra sucks. She throws her sai at Bullseye. He catches it, throws it back. She tries to catch it, but instead gets stabbed through the hand. For no particular reason, Daredevil now decides that he is willing to fight, which would have been nice if he did earlier, because he could have saved Elektra. But nothing else having changed, he just now like gets up and fights Bullseye. Daredevil gets hit with the Venom treatment from Spider-Man 3. Colin Farrell like desperately searches his belt buckle for more throwing stars. And then Daredevil is like, the bells, like staggering around, clutching his head like Tom Cruise at the end of Mission Impossible 3. And then Daredevil uses his hearing power to hear a sniper rifle that's like outside the church down the block, even though he's like in the middle of a fight. So he manages to dodge this bullet that shoots Colin Farrell through his hands, and then he holds his hands out like he's been crucified. And then Daredevil kills Bullseye by throwing him out of the church, and his one-liner is, Bullseye. And then, by the way, in the end teaser, Bullseye is still alive, of course, because everyone's still alive. And he impales a fly with a syringe, and then he says Bullseye.
Yeah, somebody wrote that. And it went all the way to production, to editing, to release, and no one thought this is the dumbest fucking thing ever. Kingpin. So, Michael Clarke Duncan, fantastic actor, really underutilized in this movie.
Yeah.
If you got him in a film, take out all the other villains. You don't need Bullseye. You don't even need Elektra. Just have Kingpin versus Daredevil.
Especially given that Kingpin is the plot of this movie, by the way, is that Kingpin runs all of the crime in New York. All of the crime, literally. Jon Favreau's like one guy runs all the crime, and Joe Pantoliano, who plays the journalist who's hunting down Daredevil, is like, well, if you think that's weird, there's a costumed vigilante out there who's taking revenge on people. And I was like, that's not as weird as one guy running all crime.
So this is the only comparison I have with the show where it's on par. The performance of Kingpin.
Right.
Vincent D'Onofrio playing Kingpin in the TV show.
Oh, it's Vincent D'Onofrio? Cool.
Yeah. He
That's
does like these giant baby tantrum slams with his fists down on people.
Yeah, that's perfect.
It's great. Michael Clarke Duncan is a massive guy. He has a deep, rumbly voice. He fits Kingpin perfectly, too. Because Kingpin is supposed to be massive and strong and ridiculously
he's the
powerful.
guy. He, like, in the comics, he looks like just kind of like a giant block, right?
Yeah,
he's like almost square.
Yeah, he's one giant piece of bicep. That's what he is. And Michael Clarke Duncan fits it perfectly. He has the mannerism. He has all of it. Why is he just not in 50% of this movie?
Yeah, he was really, really underused. I agree with you. And I felt really disappointed. I felt disappointed that Daredevil won the fight, basically, is where I was at by the end of the movie. Because I hated Ben Affleck so much. And Michael Clarke Duncan is so awesome. I was legitimately just kind of against Daredevil by the end.
It's too bad. And he gets taken down so in the lamest ways, kicking the knees.
Yeah, he gets kicked in the knees is enough to just destroy him. And by the way that he figures out to beat Kingpin is that he realizes he can see in the rain because he was looking at Elektra's face in the rain earlier in the exciting romantic sequence, so he brings that like lesson from his love story into the vigilante story and realizes that that the way he can defeat Kingpin is by seeing him and then doing his baby change move. And I was like, but you already knew that.
Yeah, you've been blind your entire life almost.
This could have been your tactic for any fight. It's not like a new thing that he discovers in this fight. And as well, the whole concept here is that he doesn't need to see and that his blindness isn't like the thing that is a problem for him in the fights. So having this beat where he like overcomes his blindness by using the sprinklers to see flies directly in the face of us watching him kick ass for an hour and a half without needing to do the sprinkler thing.
It would make more sense if this came in to defeat Bullseye.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah,
he
I
might
think that's
throw
right.
something so fast or so silently that you can't even see its projectile coming, and then it starts raining. That would make sense.
Yeah, I like that.
I wish they either stick with just Kingpin or just Bullseye and have it two completely different characters. Like, because Kingpin could have been I have the law on my side, even though I'm a villain, and you have to best me in your arena, right? Or have Bullseye be the sort of Joker character.
You're right. It could have been two different movies: Daredevil versus crime, and then Daredevil versus chaos.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
But having both of them together just doesn't give the other character, either characters enough time.
No, and especially as you're highlighting, like, it really lets down Kingpin, which is weird because Kingpin is the character that like fits with the whole vigilante thing. I have a segment suggestion, I guess, although I already feel like we got to a better one, which is just split it up and should have been a Bullseye movie or a Kingpin movie.
Yeah. I don't have one, so it's gonna be yours. I couldn't think of anything. Anything I can think of was just redo the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. What we would do if we weren't redoing the whole thing for Daredevil?
Perfect.
Okay. It pains me to say this, and I think it probably doesn't make any sense for Daredevil, and it sounds like they did a brilliant job in the show, but my fix for this movie was just to take Elektra out. I didn't think the way that they incorporated the romance into the main story was effective, even though I liked that they tried to do it, and I was just continually irritated that Elektra couldn't do anything and didn't add anything to the movie. I liked that they were trying to do this vigilante story, so if they hadn't had the, 30-40 minutes that are spent on Elektra stuff, I think they could have done a really interesting story with Daredevil being a vigilante and like working his way up the Kingpin's organization and like you said, gathering information maybe instead of just killing people, and having that conflict like slowly come to a head, because I feel like the classic story with a Kingpin where when a bad guy is a Kingpin, the way it almost always happens is that the hero like fights random gangsters of his, and then he sends his lieutenants, and then he sends his ace in the hole like Bullseye or whatever, and you fight your way up until you're finally in the offices of the Kingpin. That's like the normal kind of story structure to do that, and they would have had time to do that if they weren't messing around with all the Elektra stuff the whole time. So I totally understand why Elektra's in the movie, and it sounds like there's a million ways it could have just been done better, but my fix for this version of this movie is take Elektra out, just tell the vigilante versus Kingpin story.
Yeah.
Although that would have meant just more Ben Affleck, so I don't know.
Well,
maybe I would have disliked that too. Also, don't cast Ben Affleck as Daredevil.
Yeah, exactly. That is this week's episode with 2003's Daredevil. Next week we are doing 1993's Super Mario Bros. The movie, the one that made Nintendo go, "We're never doing this again." Understandable. Their hesitancy is very understandable.
I'm excited. I haven't seen it since I was like little kid. So
okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be an experience.
I've never sat through this movie from beginning to end, but I've seen enough chunks of it to know what it's like. So I do not look forward to watching it from beginning to end, but okay, cool. Yeah, like and subscribe, and stay tuned next week for Super Mario Bros.
Wake me up inside.